Do you remember the glass case? Every bakery in America had one, and by 7 in the morning it was full of things you cannot find anywhere today. Napoleons, cream horns, petit fours, kolaches, all of them made by hand before sunrise and sold out before lunch. Then the 1960s ended, and one by one they disappeared. Number 19 on this list took a pastry chef all morning to build, and your corner bakery sold it for loose change. And number 6 vanished so quietly that most people alive today have never tasted one. These were not factory desserts. They were made fresh, sold by the slice, and wiped from bakery counters across the country within a single generation. So hit subscribe and come along, because here is every famous bakery counter treat that vanished after the 1960s. Number 25. Kolache. Walk into any Czech bakery in Central Texas before 1965, and the first thing you saw was a tray of these. A soft, pillowy round of yeasted dough with a thumbprint in the center, filled with sweetened poppy seed paste, prune butter, or farmer cheese. The dough was enriched with butter and egg yolks, and it had a tenderness that commercial bread never touched. Czech and Slovak families brought kolache to every bakery belt from Nebraska to Texas, and small-town shops sold them warm by the dozen before 7 in the morning. You did not order one. You ordered 6, wrapped in wax paper, and you ate 2 in the car before you got home. The fruit ones stained your fingers. The cheese ones left a smear of sweetened filling on your lip. When the old bakers retired, the recipe retired with them. Number 24. Cream horns, a cone of puff pastry baked golden and crisp, filled with sweetened whipped cream or vanilla custard and dusted with powdered sugar. Every bakery in America had a tray of these in the 1950s. The good ones shattered when you bit into them, and the cream inside was cold because the baker filled them just before the morning rush. Some bakeries rolled the dough around a metal cone and baked it that way. Others shaped it by hand. Either way, the result was the same. A pastry so fragile you had to eat it over a napkin or lose half of it to the floor. The supermarket version, wrapped in plastic and shelf-stable for weeks, is not the same thing. Before I go any further, for the folks who want more old American recipes like these, favorites that most cookbooks forgot, I put together the Vintage Recipe Guide. You can find it on my website, vintagelifestyleusa.com. I will not bring it up again. If you want it, it is there. Now back to the list. Number 23. Petit fours. Tiny squares of cake, no bigger than 2 fingers side by side, covered in a smooth shell of poured fondant, and decorated with a single rosebud or a thin line of piped icing. A bakery that made good petit fours was showing off, and everybody knew it. The cake inside was usually almond or vanilla sponge, layered with apricot jam or buttercream, then coated in fondant so smooth it looked like porcelain. You bought them by the box for bridal showers, christenings, and any occasion where your mother wanted the neighbors to know she had taste. Making them was slow work. Each one had to be cut, filled, frozen, dipped, and decorated by hand. When labor costs went up and shortcuts went in, the real petit four disappeared from all but the most stubborn bakeries. Number 22. Buttermilk donuts. These were not the yeast donuts with the glossy glaze. These were cake donuts, dense and crumbly, made with buttermilk and a pinch of nutmeg, cut by hand with a metal cutter and dropped into hot lard 2 at a time. The outside cracked and crisped in the fat. The inside stayed moist and slightly tangy from the buttermilk. A bakery that fried them fresh every morning had a line at the door by 6, and the smell reached the sidewalk before the sign was even flipped to open. You bought them plain, dusted with powdered sugar, or rolled in cinnamon while still warm. Nobody decorated them. Nobody filled them with anything. The donut needed nothing else, and when bakeries switched to machines and frozen batters, the handmade buttermilk version was the first to go. Number 21. Prune Danish. Before the cheese Danish took over, prune was the original. The filling was dark and thick, made from stewed prunes cooked down with a little sugar and lemon, and it sat in a pocket of buttery laminated dough that a real baker folded by hand. Every diner in the Northeast kept a stack of them under a glass dome next to the coffee urn. Truck drivers ordered them at 4 in the morning. Businessmen grabbed one on the way to the train. The prune filling was not glamorous, but it had a depth that cheese and cherry never matched. When prunes became a punchline sometime in the 1970s, the prune Danish lost its place at the counter. The fruit never changed. The reputation did. The glass counter was the center of the neighborhood. Not the church, not the barber shop, the bakery. You walked in, and the woman behind the counter already knew what you wanted because your mother had been buying the same thing every Saturday for 15 years. The case was always cold, always clean, and the trays inside were lined with wax paper that the baker replaced every morning before the sun came up. What sat on those trays was not just food, it was proof that somebody in your neighborhood still made things by hand, still cared about the difference between good and good enough. When the last bakery on your block closed, the glass counter went to a junk dealer, and everything it stood for went with it. Number 20. Jelly roll. A thin sheet of sponge cake baked flat, spread with strawberry or grape jelly while still warm, and rolled into a tight spiral. The outside was dusted with powdered sugar, and when you sliced it, the cross-section looked like a pinwheel. Every bakery made them because the ingredients cost almost nothing, and the technique was simple once you learned the timing. You had to roll the cake while it was still flexible. Wait too long and it cracked. Rush it and the jelly squeezed out the ends. A good baker could roll one in under a minute. The jelly roll was the kind of thing you bought on a Tuesday afternoon for no reason at all, just because it was there and it cost next to nothing. Too plain for a birthday, too good to walk past. Number 19. Napoleon. 3 layers of puff pastry with pastry cream between each one, topped with a white fondant glaze striped with chocolate in a feathered pattern. This was the crown jewel of the bakery counter. The pastry had to shatter. Not bend, not flex, not chew. Shatter. That meant laminating butter into the dough dozens of times, folding and rolling and chilling and folding again until the layers numbered in the hundreds. A single Napoleon could take a pastry chef the better part of a morning, and the bakery sold it for the same price as a cup of coffee. The pastry cream was cooked from scratch, thickened on the stove, cooled in a shallow pan. Some bakers folded whipped cream into it for a lighter texture. Others kept it dense because their customers liked it that way. Eating one was an act of controlled destruction. You pressed the fork down and the top layer cracked into shards. The cream bulged out the sides, and you gave up halfway through and used your fingers. Nobody ate a Napoleon neatly. When frozen puff pastry hit the market in the 1960s, some bakeries switched to the shortcut. The customers noticed. By the 1980s, a real Napoleon was almost impossible to find outside of a French patisserie. And when those shops closed, the Napoleon left with them. Number 18. Schaumtorte. This was Wisconsin's contribution to the bakery counter, and outside the upper Midwest, almost nobody knew its name. A large, crisp meringue shell, baked low and slow until the outside turned pale ivory and the inside stayed soft and marshmallow-like. The shell was filled with whipped cream and fresh strawberries or raspberries when they were in season, and canned fruit the rest of the year. Milwaukee bakeries sold them whole or by the slice, and they appeared at every church supper and bridal shower from Green Bay to Madison. The meringue shattered the second your fork touched it, and you spent the rest of the dessert chasing shards of sugar across your plate. Making one required patience and a dry day. Selling one required a customer who already knew what it was. When the German bakeries closed, the Schaumtorte lost its only salesman. Number 17. Burnt sugar cake. The name scared people who had never tried it, but one bite, and you understood everything. A baker started by heating white sugar in a heavy saucepan. No water, no butter, just dry sugar over a medium flame, stirring with a wooden spoon until the crystals melted and the liquid turned the color of dark honey. Then he let it go another 30 seconds until the kitchen smelled like caramel that had crossed the line into something deeper, almost smoky. That liquid was the foundation of the whole cake. A few tablespoons went into the batter, a few more into the frosting, and the rest was saved for the next batch. The layers came out a warm tan, close-grained and tender, with a flavor somewhere between butterscotch and coffee. The frosting was a cooked caramel icing that set with a slight chew and cracked when you pressed a fork through it. Bakeries across the South and Midwest kept it in the case through the 1950s, and regulars reached for it first. The margin for error was razor thin. Cook the sugar too light and the cake tasted flat. Too dark and the bitterness took over. The window between those two outcomes was about 30 seconds, and the bakers who got it right did so because they had ruined enough pans to know the exact moment the sugar crossed from sweet to complex. When those bakers retired, burnt sugar cake did not survive. The recipe existed in cookbooks, but the timing did not. You could not write down the exact shade of amber. You had to stand at the stove and learn it. Number 16. Hermit cookies. A thick, soft, chewy cookie loaded with raisins, walnuts, and warm spices. Molasses, dark and sturdy enough to survive a week in a paper bag without going stale. That was the selling point. Hermits traveled. Sailors carried them on long voyages. Mothers packed them in lunch pails. And bakeries sold them by the pound because they kept better than almost anything else in the case. The flavor was somewhere between gingerbread and fruitcake, but without the density of either. Cinnamon, cloves, allspice, and a heavy pour of molasses gave them a warmth that hit you before you finished chewing. Some bakeries cut them into bars. Others shaped them into thick rounds. Either way, they were the cookie you bought when you wanted something that would last. Number 15. Pinwheel cookies. 2 sheets of cookie dough, 1 vanilla and 1 chocolate, rolled together into a tight spiral and chilled until firm, then sliced into thin rounds that showed a perfect black and white swirl. Every bakery had a jar of them on the counter, sold by the piece or by the pound, and children picked them because they looked like something from a cartoon. The dough was a simple butter cookie, crisp and not too sweet, and the chocolate half got its color from cocoa powder. The trick was rolling the 2 sheets to the same thickness, so the spiral stayed even. Bakers who rushed it ended up with lopsided swirls and customers who noticed. When supermarket cookies took over the jar on the counter, pinwheels were among the first casualties. They took too long to assemble for what they sold for. Number 14. Rum Baba. A small, golden, yeast-risen cake baked in a tall mold soaked after baking in a warm syrup spiked with dark rum until the sponge was heavy, fragrant, and nearly translucent. You could smell it from across the bakery. The dough was rich with eggs and butter, and the baking had to be precise. An overbaked baba would not absorb the syrup. An underbaked one collapsed into mush. European bakeries in the big cities kept them in the case year-round, standing upright like small golden towers, glistening with syrup and sometimes crowned with a spoonful of whipped cream. The rum baba required a baker who understood fermentation, timing, and restraint. Too much rum and the cake tasted like a dish rag. Too little and it was just bread. The balance was everything, and most American bakeries never found it. The baker knew your name. He knew your mother's name too. He knew that your father liked rye bread sliced thin, and your sister would not eat anything with raisins in it. He knew because you had been coming in every week since you were small enough to press your nose against the case without bending down. That is not a business relationship. That is a neighborhood. And when the neighborhood changed, when the bakery became a laundromat or a cell phone store, it was not just bread you lost. It was the man who handed your daughter her first cookie over the counter without charging for it, because he remembered doing the same thing for you 30 years before. Supermarkets sell bread, they sell cake, they do not sell that. Number 13. Poppy seed roll. A long braided or rolled loaf of sweet yeasted dough filled with a thick paste of ground poppy seeds, sugar, butter, and sometimes honey or lemon zest. Hungarian and Polish bakeries sold them year-round, but they stacked up before Easter and Christmas until the counter could barely hold them all. The filling was ground so fine it turned almost black, and it had a nutty, slightly bitter flavor that nothing else in the bakery case could match. Slicing one revealed a tight spiral of dark filling inside pale golden bread, and the contrast made it look like something from an old European pastry book. You ate it plain with coffee, and one slice was enough to keep you quiet for an hour. The poppy seed grinders those bakeries used were cast-iron hand-crank machines bolted to the counter, and when the bakers who owned them passed away, the machines and the recipe went into the same box. Number 12. Pfeffernusse, small, round, hard spice cookies coated in a white glaze that cracked when you bit into them. The name means pepper nuts in German, and the cookies earned it. Black pepper, white pepper, anise, cinnamon, cardamom, and cloves packed into a dough so dense you could hear it hit the counter when the baker dropped it. German and Dutch bakeries in the Midwest sold them by the bag every winter, and families who had been buying them for decades drove across town to get the right ones from the right shop. Each bakery had its own recipe, and arguments about whose Pfeffernusse were better could last generations. The cookies were meant to be hard. You dunked them in coffee or tea, and the spice bloomed in the heat. Without a German baker on the corner, the real Pfeffernusse simply stopped existing in most towns. Number 11. Linzer Torte Cookies, a sandwich cookie made from 2 rounds of nut-flavored shortbread, the top one cut with a small window in the center, filled with raspberry jam so the red showed through like stained glass. The dough was made with ground almonds or hazelnuts, butter, and a pinch of cinnamon, and it was rolled thin and cut with a special cutter that stamped the window into the top piece. The jam had to be seedless so the filling looked clean through the opening. These were occasion cookies, the kind a bakery put in the front row of the case because they were beautiful and because beautiful things sold. When the labor cost of cutting, filling, and assembling them one by one outpaced what anyone would pay for a cookie, they disappeared from all but the most dedicated shops. Number 10. Black Forest Cake. 3 layers of dark chocolate sponge cake soaked in cherry brandy, filled with whipped cream and sour cherries, covered in chocolate shavings, with a ring of whole cherries on top placed by hand. This was the most dramatic thing in the bakery case. The cake came from the Black Forest region of Germany, where Kirsch, a clear cherry brandy, has been distilled for a long time. The original recipe called for Kirschwasser in both the layers and the filling, and a bakery that left out the brandy was not making a Black Forest cake. It was making a chocolate cake with cherries on it. American bakeries started carrying it in the early 1960s, and within a few years it sat on cake stands in bakeries across the country. The sour cherries were the key, not maraschino cherries, bleached and dyed and soaked in sugar syrup, but real sour cherries, dark and tart, packed in their own juice. Finding them fresh was seasonal work, and finding them jarred required a supplier who understood the recipe. When supermarket bakeries tried to replicate it, they used canned pie filling and stabilized whipped topping instead of real cream. The cake became a picture of what it used to be, and the people who remembered the original stopped ordering it. A real Black Forest cake weighed almost nothing for its size because the layers were mostly air, cream, and fruit. That lightness was the first thing the imitations lost. The supermarket bakery was supposed to be convenient, and it was. You could buy a birthday cake at the same place you bought laundry soap, and nobody had to make a special trip. But convenience has a cost, and the cost was everything that made a real bakery worth visiting. The supermarket could not afford a pastry chef who spent years learning laminated dough. It could not afford ingredients that spoiled in a day. It could not let the case go empty at 9 in the evening, so it bought frozen, thawed it, glazed it, and put a sign on it that said "Fresh Baked." And technically, it was fresh. But technically is not the same thing as true, and everyone old enough to remember the difference knows it. Number 9. Swedish tea ring. A circle of sweet yeasted dough rolled around a filling of butter, cinnamon, sugar, and sometimes chopped pecans, then curved into a ring, slashed at intervals to fan the layers open and baked until golden. Scandinavian bakeries across Minnesota and Wisconsin displayed them in the front window, and the fanned slices showed off the spiral filling like a crown. The dough was soft and rich, pulled apart rather than sliced, and each section came away with its own ribbon of cinnamon butter running through the center. A white glaze drizzled over the top while the ring was still warm, sealed in the moisture, and added a crack of sweetness to every bite. Church groups ordered them for Christmas morning. Neighbors brought them to welcome a new family on the block. The tea ring required shaping by hand, and no two ever came out identical, which was the whole appeal. When the old Scandinavian neighborhoods changed, the bakeries changed with them, and the tea ring quietly left the window. Number 8. Bee sting cake. A yeasted cake split into 2 layers filled with thick vanilla custard and topped with a crunchy caramel almond crust that shattered under your teeth. The German name is Bienenstich, and the story behind it varies depending on which baker you asked. Some said a baker was stung by a bee attracted to the honey in the topping. Others said the almond crust stung your tongue with sweetness. The topping was made by cooking butter, sugar, honey, and sliced almonds together until they turned golden, then spreading the mixture over the dough before baking. When the cake came out of the oven, the almond layer was crisp and caramelized, and it crackled when you cut through it with a serrated knife. The contrast between the crunchy top and the cold custard inside was what made this cake impossible to forget and nearly impossible to find today. Number 7. Almond horn cookies. A crescent-shaped cookie made from almond paste, sugar, and egg whites, the outside coated in sliced almonds, and both tips dipped in dark chocolate. These were the aristocrats of the cookie tray, and every Italian and German bakery kept them front and center because nothing else in the case looked as elegant or cost as much per piece. The inside was dense, chewy, and intensely almond-flavored, almost like marzipan that had been baked just enough to hold its shape. The sliced almonds on the outside toasted in the oven and gave each bite a crunch that the soft interior did not have on its own. You bought them for holidays, for hostess gifts, and for the one person in the family who did not care for chocolate cake. Bakeries charged a premium because the almond paste was expensive and the shaping was done by hand, one crescent at a time. When ingredient costs rose and labor got tight, the almond horn was one of the first items scratched from the daily list. Number 6. Meringue kisses. Tiny mounds of egg white and sugar piped onto parchment paper and baked at such a low temperature they barely colored at all. They came out white, feather-light, and so dry they dissolved on your tongue in seconds. Some bakeries folded in mini chocolate chips or chopped pecans. Others tinted them pink or green for holidays. But the plain ones, the ones that tasted like nothing but sugar and air, were the ones people remembered. A baker could fit 100 on a single sheet pan, and they sold by the bag, usually in a small cellophane pouch tied with a twist. Children loved them because they crunched and then vanished. Adults loved them because they weighed nothing and went with everything. Making them was simple. Keeping them was the problem. One humid afternoon, and the whole batch turned sticky, which meant a bakery in the South could only sell them reliably from October through March. When the old bakeries closed, meringue kisses were too fragile and too cheap to justify the shelf space anywhere else. The last baker on your block did not retire. He surrendered. The rent climbed. The flour got more expensive. The customers came less often because the supermarket was open later and closer to the highway. He held on for a while, opening at 4 in the morning the way he always had, pulling trays from the oven in the dark while the rest of the street slept. But there is a line between stubbornness and survival, and he knew which side he was standing on. When he finally locked the door and taped a piece of paper to the glass that said closed, the people who loved his bread stood on the sidewalk and did not know what to say. They said it was a shame, and it was. Number 5. Coconut layer cake. 3 tall layers of white cake filled and frosted with thick white icing and covered entirely in shredded coconut so it looked like a snowball the size of a dinner plate. The coconut on the outside was fresh, not sweetened, not toasted, and the baker pressed it into the frosting by hand, turning the cake on a stand and packing the shreds until no frosting showed through. The cake underneath was moist, fine-grained, and flavored with coconut milk or extract, and the frosting was a boiled icing, cooked to the soft ball stage and beaten until it held stiff peaks. This was the cake you brought to Easter dinner, the one your aunt made every spring and guarded the recipe for. The bakery version sat tall in the case, and every time someone ordered a slice, the baker had to cut through a wall of coconut so thick the shreds clung to the knife. Number 4. Zwieback. a twice-baked bread sliced and toasted until it was dry, golden, and crisp all the way through. The name comes from the German word for twice-baked, and that is exactly what it was. The first bake made it bread. The second bake made it something closer to a thick cracker, sweet and mild, hard enough to survive weeks on a shelf. American bakeries sold it as a snack, a teething food for babies and a light breakfast for people with a delicate stomach. Mothers soaked it in warm milk for toddlers. Old men dipped it in coffee. Zwieback was the kind of thing nobody thought about until it was gone, and then everyone realized they had been eating it their whole life without ever learning its proper name. Number 3. 7-layer cookies. A bar cookie built in layers directly in the baking pan, graham cracker crust on the bottom, then butterscotch chips, chocolate chips, shredded coconut, chopped walnuts, and a full can of sweetened condensed milk poured over the top to bind it all together. The condensed milk seeped through everything, caramelized in the oven, and turned the whole thing into a sticky, crunchy, chewy slab that the baker cut into small bars because a large piece would knock you sideways. Italian and Jewish bakeries across the Northeast had a pan of these in the case every day, and they went by a dozen names. Magic bars, Hello Dollies, Everything bars. Whatever you called them, you knew them on sight. The layers were visible from the side, stacked like sediment in a canyon wall, and each one tasted different from the one above it. Number 2. Lane cake. A white layer cake from Alabama filled with a cooked mixture of egg yolks, sugar, butter, raisins, pecans, and a generous pour of bourbon, then frosted with fluffy white icing. The filling was what made it legendary. Rich, boozy, and dense, it soaked into the cake layers overnight until the whole thing became something closer to a southern trifle than a standard layer cake. The recipe first appeared in a cookbook published in 1898 by Emma Rylander Lane of Clayton, Alabama, and it won a prize at the county fair. Harper Lee mentioned Lane cake in To Kill a Mockingbird. Miss Maudie bakes one, and anyone who grew up in the Deep South knows exactly what that scene means. The Lane cake demanded real bourbon and real patience, and when both fell short, it slipped off the bakery counter and into the kind of memory that only comes back when someone says the name. Number 1. Crumb cake. A slab of tender yellow cake, not too tall, not too sweet, topped with a thick layer of streusel crumbs made from butter, sugar, and flour. The crumbs were the whole reason you bought it. They were sandy, buttery, and piled so high they sometimes outweighed the cake underneath. A light dusting of powdered sugar on top was the only decoration it ever needed. Every neighborhood bakery in the Northeast sold crumb cake by the square, cut from a full sheet pan and slid into a white paper bag. You ate it with coffee on a Saturday morning at the kitchen table, and the crumbs fell onto the newspaper, and nobody cared. Nobody bought it for a birthday. Nobody saved it for a special occasion. It was the cake you bought just because the bakery was open and you were walking past. The crumbs held everything. The butter, the vanilla, the brown sugar warmth that no factory could replicate. When the corner bakeries disappeared, the crumb cake they made every morning disappeared with them. What the grocery store sells today under the same name is a different thing entirely. The crumbs are smaller, the cake is drier, and the powdered sugar hides the difference but cannot fix it. Real crumb cake never needed to be explained. You walked past the window, you saw the pan, and you walked in. Hamburger gravy over mashed potatoes was the meal that proved cafeteria ladies understood comfort food better than any restaurant chef. Ground beef was browned in massive tilting skillets. Then flour was sprinkled over the meat and stirred until it absorbed the fat and juices. Milk or beef broth was added gradually while stirring constantly until a thick, creamy gravy formed around every crumble of meat. This savory mixture was ladled generously over mounds of mashed potatoes made from flakes reconstituted with butter and milk. The combination created a meal that satisfied on the deepest level, warming children from the inside out on cold school days. Students who cleaned their trays often returned for seconds when available, and the smell of browning beef drew them toward the lunch line before the bell rang. The recipe required minimal ingredients but maximum attention to technique, as lumpy gravy was considered unacceptable by proud cafeteria veterans. Hamburger gravy represented honest institutional cooking at its finest. Number 23. Creamed chipped beef on toast. Dried beef torn into strips, stirred into a thick white sauce made from butter, flour, and whole milk, then spooned over a piece of toast. Soldiers had a name for it that nobody repeated in polite company. Woolworths just called it lunch. The sauce was heavy, salty, and filling, and it cost almost nothing to make, which is exactly why it showed up on dime store menus across the country. A plate of creamed chipped beef at Woolworths came with a cup of coffee if the waitress liked you. The beef itself was paper-thin, almost translucent, shaved from a pressed block that sat in the kitchen cooler. When Woolworth's faded creamed chipped beef on toast went with it. You can still buy the dried beef in a jar, but the lunch counter version, served hot and fast on a thick slice of white toast, is gone. In the 1960s, muffins began to solidify their place as a beloved breakfast staple, offering a versatile alternative to the traditional toast and eggs. Though muffins had been around for centuries, the 60s saw them gain new prominence, especially with the rise of convenience foods and changing eating habits. These fluffy treats came in both savory and sweet varieties, making them the perfect option for busy mornings or quick snacks. Made with simple ingredients like flour, sugar, eggs, milk, and baking powder, muffins are incredibly easy to whip up. The basic batter could be transformed into a multitude of flavors, from sweet blueberry or banana nut to savory cheese and herb varieties. Many bakers at the time began experimenting with different mix-ins, turning muffins into a personal creation. The 1960s saw an explosion of muffin recipes, with home cooks and bakeries alike embracing this easy, portable breakfast. Today's muffin scene has evolved to include everything from gluten-free options to more decadent, indulgent varieties like double chocolate or pumpkin spice. While they still carry that same nostalgia, the 60s version often had a simpler, homier feel, made with pantry staples and no fancy add-ins. Swedish meatballs arrived in cafeterias during a decade when Scandinavian cuisine briefly captured American imagination. These smaller, rounder meatballs were made from a mixture of ground beef and pork, combined with breadcrumbs soaked in milk, creating an exceptionally tender texture. The secret was the creamy gravy made from pan drippings, beef broth, and sour cream that coated each meatball in pale brown sauce. Cafeteria versions often substituted evaporated milk for sour cream to reduce costs, but the result remained surprisingly delicious. Students received portions of meatballs swimming in gravy alongside egg noodles or mashed potatoes that soaked up every drop of sauce. The dish felt sophisticated compared to typical cafeteria fare, introducing children to flavors beyond standard American cooking. Teachers often requested extra portions, recognizing quality when they tasted it. Swedish meatballs showed that school kitchens could execute international recipes when given proper ingredients. Number 19. Deviled ham sandwich. Underwood deviled ham spread straight from the red can with the devil on the label, smeared on white bread, sometimes with a thin layer of yellow mustard, sometimes with nothing else at all. This was one of the cheapest sandwiches on the Woolworths menu, and for a lot of people it was the first time they ever tasted deviled ham. The can cost pennies. The labor cost was zero. You opened the can, you spread it, you served it. No cooking, no heating, no skill required. And yet, it tasted like something. That salty, finely ground pork paste with its smoky pepper bite was oddly addictive. Kids loved it because it came from a can with a cartoon devil. Adults loved it because it was filling and it cost almost nothing. Woolworth's lunch counters moved through cases of Underwood deviled ham every week. The spread had been around since the 1860s, making it one of the oldest branded food products in the country. But the lunch counter sandwich was the version that put it in front of millions of people who never would have bought the can at a grocery store. The waitress would set it down on a small plate next to a handful of potato chips and a pickle spear, and that was lunch. No sides menu, no upsell, just a sandwich that cost a dime and tasted like it cost more. When Woolworths disappeared, the deviled ham sandwich disappeared from public life along with it. You can still buy the can today at most grocery stores. The red devil is still on the label, and the recipe inside has barely changed. But nobody is spreading it on bread behind a lunch counter and sliding it across to you on a ceramic plate for pocket change. The deviled ham sandwich was never going to end up on a restaurant menu. It was too cheap, too simple, too plain for that. It needed a place like Woolworth's to exist in public, and when that place was gone, the sandwich went back into kitchens and packed lunches where no one could see it. There's something about a warm, fruity dessert that makes you feel right at home, and few desserts are as comforting as peach cobbler. Originating in the southern United States, peach cobbler is a testament to the tradition of showcasing seasonal fruits, but by the 1960s, it had become a beloved treat enjoyed nationwide. In fact, it quickly became the dessert of choice when peaches were in season, often served at summer barbecues and family gatherings. The recipe is simple, but the flavors are anything but. Ripe, juicy peaches are mixed with sugar and a touch of cinnamon, then topped with a biscuit-like dough that bakes into a golden, flaky crust. The result is a sweet, slightly tangy filling beneath a crisp topping, making it the perfect balance of textures. In the 1960s, peach cobbler was often made with fresh or canned peaches, and many cooks relied on their own tried-and-true methods to prepare it. Today, while fresh peaches are still the preferred choice, frozen or canned versions make it more convenient for busy families. And let's not forget the modern twist of adding a scoop of ice cream or whipped cream on top, a nice nod to the nostalgia of this all-American classic. Salmon croquettes appeared on cafeteria menus when budget constraints required creative protein solutions during the middle of the month. Canned salmon was mashed with crushed saltine crackers, beaten eggs, and minced onion until the mixture held together enough to form into oval patties. These patties were dredged in cracker crumbs and fried until golden brown and crispy outside while staying moist and flaky within. The salmon flavor was mild and slightly sweet. Nothing like fresh fish, but comforting in its own institutional way. Cafeteria ladies served them with tartar sauce and often paired them with creamed peas or macaroni salad. Children either loved or hated salmon croquettes, with little middle ground, but those who loved them remembered the crispy exterior giving way to tender fish inside. The recipe stretched expensive protein into affordable portions while providing genuine nutrition. Salmon croquettes represented practical cooking wisdom that prioritized feeding children well. Number 20. Welsh Rarebit. Cheddar cheese melted down with a splash of Worcestershire sauce, sometimes a little beer, poured hot over a thick piece of toast. Woolworths served it as a lunch special, usually with a pickle on the side. The name sounded fancy. The dish was anything but. It was melted cheese on bread with a kick, and it cost about as much as a grilled cheese but felt like twice the meal. Welsh Rarebit had been around for centuries, but the Woolworths version stripped it down to its simplest form. No ramekin, no broiler crust, just a ladle of cheese sauce over toast on a heavy ceramic plate. When the counters closed, Welsh Rarebit lost its last foothold in everyday American eating. Today it exists almost exclusively in British pubs and old cookbooks, and most people under 50 have never heard of it. In the 1960s, there was one pastry that people simply couldn't resist: sticky buns. These sweet, gooey delights quickly became a staple in American bakeries, their rich caramel and nut topping making them an instant classic. While the sticky buns' roots stretch back to the 18th century, it was in the post-war era that this treat truly became a sensation, rising in popularity alongside other indulgent desserts. Made from a yeasted dough similar to cinnamon rolls, sticky buns are baked in a sweet syrup made from butter, brown sugar, and corn syrup, which creates that signature sticky, caramelized finish. Chopped pecans or walnuts often top the buns, adding a crunchy contrast to the gooey sweetness below. The combination of rich, melt-in-your-mouth caramel and soft dough made these treats a breakfast favorite, though it wasn't unusual to see them enjoyed at any time of day. By today's standards, the version we enjoy may have fewer nuts or a less syrupy topping, but the core of the sticky bun remains the same. In the 1960s, these were often sold in bakeries, the warm smell filling the streets, adding to their nostalgic appeal. Today, Pre-made sticky buns can be found in almost any bakery or grocery store, but the irresistible allure of that caramelized topping keeps them a beloved treat, no matter the decade. American chop suey was the cafeteria's answer to Italian-Chinese fusion decades before fusion cuisine became trendy. Elbow macaroni was boiled until tender, then mixed with seasoned ground beef browned with onions and green peppers in massive tilting skillets. Tomato sauce and a blend of spices, including oregano and garlic powder, brought everything together into a hearty one-pot meal that could serve hundreds of students. The dish had nothing to do with actual Chinese cooking, but its name suggested exotic origins that made it seem more interesting than simple beef and pasta. Schools across New England particularly embraced this recipe, serving it weekly throughout fall and winter months. The combination of protein, starch, and vegetables in one serving made it nutritionally complete and easy to portion. Cafeteria ladies could prepare enormous batches in advance and keep them warm in steam tables for hours without quality loss. American chop suey was cafeteria efficiency at its finest. Number 21. Egg salad sandwich. Hard-boiled eggs mashed with mayonnaise, a little mustard, salt, pepper, and maybe some finely chopped celery if the cook felt generous, pressed between soft bread and cut in half. Woolworths made these by the dozens every morning, wrapped them in wax paper, and stacked them in a glass case at the counter. They were cold, they were plain, and they cost next to nothing. The egg salad sandwich was what you ordered when you had 15 cents and no opinion about lunch. Every Woolworths coast to coast had the same one, made the same way, tasting roughly the same whether you were in Portland or Tallahassee. That kind of national consistency from a lunch counter without a franchise playbook is something that does not exist anymore. After World War II, the world of pastries saw a resurgence, and one treat that quickly became a favorite was the delicate chocolate eclair. With its origins tracing back to 19th century France, this pastry became an emblem of post-war indulgence in America. Light, crisp, and filled with rich custard cream, the eclair was the perfect balance of luxury and simplicity, something everyone could enjoy, whether at an afternoon tea or a celebratory event. The key to a classic eclair lies in its choux pastry, which puffs up during baking to create a hollow center, ideal for filling with creamy custard or whipped cream. A glossy layer of chocolate icing tops it all off, adding just the right amount of sweetness. In the 1960s, these pastries were often served at elegant gatherings, where their delicate nature and decadent flavor made them a hit. Today, we might find eclairs in more varied flavors like coffee or fruit, but the traditional chocolate-filled version remains a favorite. Did you know that the word éclair comes from the French word for flash, referencing the speed with which these pastries are devoured? And while they've evolved, the joy of biting into an eclair with its perfect blend of cream and pastry is a timeless treat that still has us hooked. Peanut butter bars satisfied the after-lunch sweet tooth while delivering protein that helped students focus through afternoon classes. A base layer of oats, flour, brown sugar, and butter was pressed into sheet pans and baked until golden. Creamy peanut butter was mixed with powdered sugar and softened butter to create a thick filling spread across the warm crust. The final layer of chocolate chips melted over warm peanut butter created a glossy, dark topping that firmed as it cooled. Cut into small squares, these bars were rich enough that modest portions satisfied completely. The combination of textures made eating them an experience requiring attention and appreciation. Schools could prepare massive batches that held well throughout lunch service without refrigeration. The ingredients were affordable and the recipe forgiving, allowing even inexperienced bakers to produce consistent results. Peanut butter bars became trading currency in cafeterias, with students offering milk cartons and fruit cups for extra squares. What the Woolworths counter really was. The lunch counter at Woolworths was never meant to be a restaurant. It was a trap. You walked in to buy a spool of thread or a tube of lipstick, and the smell of grilled onions and toasted bread pulled you onto a stool before you made it to the register. Frank Woolworth figured out early that a fed customer stays longer and spends more. So the counter became the anchor of the store. But something happened that nobody planned for. The counter became the place where people went on purpose. Retirees, working mothers, teenagers skipping class, store clerks on their break. It became a public table in a country that was running out of public tables. And when it disappeared, nothing replaced it. Not the food court, not the drive-through window. The counter was the last place in American retail where strangers sat elbow to elbow and ate the same food. If there's one pastry that's become synonymous with celebration, it's the jelly donut. While the history of filled pastries goes back centuries, the jelly donut, especially popular in the 1960s, became a holiday favorite, often served at family gatherings or special occasions. This treat gained traction in America around the mid-20th century, becoming a go-to indulgence during festive seasons like Hanukkah and even New Year's. A soft, yeast-based dough is fried to golden perfection, then injected with a generous filling of sweet jelly, usually raspberry or strawberry. A light dusting of powdered sugar completes the look. Simple, yet incredibly satisfying, jelly donuts became a favorite for their combination of rich, warm dough and the burst of fruit filling in every bite. In the 1960s, jelly donuts were often made at home or purchased fresh from local bakeries, making them a nostalgic treat that took a bit of effort and care. Today, while you can find them in almost every donut shop, with an endless variety of fillings and toppings, it's the classic combination of sugar and fruit jelly that remains the most nostalgic. Cheese zombies were the mysterious bread pockets that appeared under different names in cafeterias across America throughout the decade. Soft bread dough was wrapped around American cheese slices, sealed at the edges, and baked until golden brown and puffy. When students bit through the tender crust, melted cheese stretched in long strings that required careful navigation to avoid dripping onto shirts. The name varied by region, with some schools calling them cheese pockets or cheesy bread, but the concept remained consistent. These handheld treats required no utensils and could be eaten while walking to recess, making them popular with children who wanted to maximize playground time. Cafeteria workers could prepare hundreds in advance, freezing unbaked zombies for later use when schedules demanded quick solutions. The combination of soft bread and gooey cheese created a textural experience that students remembered decades later. Cheese zombies proved that simple combinations executed well could achieve legendary status in lunch. Number 25, pimento cheese sandwich. Sharp cheddar ground up with mayonnaise and a jar of diced pimentos, spread thick on soft white bread and cut corner to corner. No lettuce, no tomato, nothing fancy. This was the sandwich that every Woolworths in the South had ready before the doors opened. The pimento cheese was mixed fresh each morning in most locations, kept in a steel bowl behind the counter, and spooned out by the scoop. You could get one for under $1 in the early 1960s. It was the kind of sandwich that tasted better at a lunch counter than it ever did at home because the bread was always fresh and the cheese had that slightly tangy bite from sitting in the cooler overnight. When the counters closed, pimento cheese retreated back to church suppers and family reunions, and the lunch counter version disappeared completely. Rich, nutty, and oh-so-decadent, pecan pie became a true star of American holiday tables in the 1960s. While the origins of the pie trace back to the southern United States, it was during the mid-20th century that it really gained widespread popularity. By the 60s, it had become an essential part of family gatherings, especially during Thanksgiving and Christmas. A classic pecan pie starts with a buttery pie crust, filled with a mixture of corn syrup, brown sugar, butter, and eggs, all topped off with a generous layer of pecans. When baked, the filling becomes rich and gooey, while the pecans add a crunchy texture that perfectly complements the sweetness of the filling. Today, while you can still find the same traditional recipe, many versions use pre-made crusts or even tweak the filling with ingredients like maple syrup or chocolate. Still, the nostalgic appeal of a slice of pecan pie is hard to beat. Fun fact: pecan pie became even more beloved after World War II, when pecans, once a rare treat, became more widely available in grocery stores across the country. Turkey tetrazzini transformed Thanksgiving leftovers into a creamy casserole that students actually requested by name. Cubed turkey was folded into cooked spaghetti, along with sliced mushrooms and a rich sauce made from butter, flour, milk, and chicken broth. The mixture was poured into deep hotel pans, topped with Parmesan and breadcrumbs, then baked until golden and bubbling around the edges. The sauce became silky during baking, clinging to every strand of pasta and piece of turkey. What made this dish special was how it elevated ordinary ingredients into something almost elegant for a school cafeteria. The mushrooms added earthiness, the Parmesan contributed sharpness, and the breadcrumb topping provided textural contrast. November and December menus featured turkey tetrazzini regularly as schools worked through commodity turkey supplies. Children who typically avoided casseroles made exceptions for this one, scraping their trays clean. Turkey tetrazzini proved institutional cooking could achieve genuine deliciousness. Number 22. Cottage cheese and peach plate. A scoop of cottage cheese in the center of a plate, surrounded by canned peach halves, sometimes with a maraschino cherry dropped in the middle. This was the diet plate. Every woman watching her figure in the 1950s and 1960s ordered this, and every Woolworths had it on the menu. No cooking involved. The peaches came out of a commercial-sized can, the cottage cheese out of a 5-pound tub, and the whole thing was plated in under a minute. It looked like health food before health food existed. The combination of sweet canned fruit and cold, lumpy cottage cheese was considered a sensible choice at the time, and ordering it at the counter meant you were being practical. That entire idea vanished with the counter itself. In the 1960s, as Americans became more health-conscious and sought lighter desserts, one pie stood out as the perfect balance of tart and sweet: lemon meringue pie. With its refreshing citrus filling, fluffy meringue topping, and crisp pie crust, it fit right in with the era's desire for lighter, yet indulgent, treats. Though the pie's origins can be traced back to 19th century Europe, it found a new home in American bakeries, where it became a favorite during spring and summer gatherings. The filling of a lemon meringue pie consists of lemon juice, sugar, cornstarch, and egg yolks, cooked to a smooth consistency before being poured into a golden pie crust. The meringue, whipped egg whites, and sugar then crowns the pie, baked until golden brown. In the 1960s, many bakers took pride in making the meringue from scratch, with the delicate texture being a hallmark of the pie's charm. Today, the version we enjoy may come with shortcuts, like pre-made crusts and even store-bought meringue. But the essence of lemon meringue remains the same. The sharp lemon flavor of the pie made it the perfect contrast to the richness of other desserts, and its lighter feel made it a popular choice in the health-conscious era. Cheeseburger pie turned the beloved American hamburger into a casserole that could feed entire classrooms from a single pan. Ground beef was browned with onions and seasoned with salt, pepper, and Worcestershire sauce, then spread across the bottom of baking dishes. A simple batter made from eggs, milk, flour, and baking powder was poured over the meat layer, creating a soft bread-like topping as it baked. Sliced American cheese was layered on top during the final minutes of baking, melting into a golden blanket that tied everything together. The result was somewhere between a burger, a biscuit, and a pot pie, satisfying multiple cravings simultaneously. Cafeteria ladies loved this recipe because it required no individual assembly and could be sliced into perfect portions. Students loved it because it delivered all the flavors they craved from cheeseburgers without the mess. Cheeseburger pie represented the creative problem-solving that defined school cafeteria cooking. Number 24. Lime Jello salad. A square of bright green gelatin loaded with shredded carrots, crushed pineapple, and sometimes cottage cheese, served on a leaf of iceberg lettuce with a dollop of mayonnaise on top. Woolworth's lunch counters kept these pre-made in individual glass dishes behind the counter, lined up on a refrigerated shelf where you could point at the one you wanted. It counted as a salad. It counted as a side. Some people ordered it as dessert. Nobody questioned it. The green wobble was part of the scenery at every five and dime counter in the country, and when those counters shut down, the Jello salad lost its last public stage. You can still find the recipe in old church cookbooks, but nobody is serving it over a lunch counter anymore. Imagine a dessert that practically steals the show. An ice cream cake topped with fluffy meringue then set aflame. That was the Baked Alaska, a true showstopper in the 1960s. often making appearances at extravagant dinner parties and special celebrations. This dramatic dessert has roots dating back to the 19th century, but it reached its peak popularity in mid-20th century America, where it became synonymous with luxury and indulgence. A recipe that screamed special occasion, Baked Alaska quickly became the go-to treat for birthdays, anniversaries, and even New Year's Eve parties. In its simplest form, the dish consists of a layer of sponge cake, followed by a generous scoop of ice cream, all encased in a thick layer of meringue. The whole thing is then baked in a hot oven for just a few minutes, enough to crisp the meringue without melting the ice cream inside. The result was a perfect combination of warm, crisp, and cold, all wrapped up in a theatrical presentation. Back in the 60s, Baked Alaska was often flambéed at the table, adding an extra dash of drama. Today's version may lack the theatrics, but the flavors remain timeless. Fiestada Mexican Pizza introduced countless American children to flavors beyond their family dinner tables throughout the 70s. These hexagonal treats featured a crispy, tortilla-like crust topped with seasoned ground beef, refried beans, and melted cheese that turned bubbly under commercial broilers. The beef was seasoned with cumin, chili powder, and garlic, creating an aroma that announced Mexican Pizza Day throughout school hallways. Unlike authentic Mexican food, fiestadas were designed for institutional efficiency, arriving frozen and requiring only reheating before service. Students loved the crispy edges that shattered when bitten and the stretchy cheese that connected each piece to their mouths. Some cafeterias added shredded lettuce and diced tomatoes after baking, while others kept them simple. The hexagonal shape made them distinctive and memorable, setting them apart from rectangular pizza squares served on other days. Fiestada represented the cafeteria's attempt to offer variety through food. Number 18, hot open-faced turkey sandwich. A slice of white bread laid flat on a plate, covered with sliced turkey, then smothered in brown gravy. Mashed potatoes on the side, sometimes with a scoop of cranberry sauce. This was the Thanksgiving plate you could get any Tuesday in January, and Woolworths served it as a daily special in most locations. The turkey was roasted in-house in some stores and came from a commercial supplier in others, but the gravy was always made from drippings and flour, thick enough to hold its shape on the bread. You ate it with a knife and fork. Nobody picked this up. The gravy made sure of that. It was a full hot dinner for the price of a sandwich, and people who ate alone at the counter ordered it more than almost anything else. That open-faced turkey plate was comfort on a 10-inch ceramic dish. In the vibrant, bold era of the 1960s, layer cakes were a celebration of color and creativity. Reflecting the lively, experimental spirit of the decade, these cakes often featured multiple layers of cake and frosting in bright, eye-catching hues. It was about making a statement, whether for a birthday, a family gathering, or just because these multi-layered cakes were the epitome of fun and festivity. Traditionally made with simple ingredients like flour, sugar, eggs, and butter, the cake was often flavored with vanilla or chocolate. But it was the frosting that stole the show. Bold colors, thanks to artificial food dyes, created cakes that were as visually stunning as they were delicious. For many bakers, frosting wasn't just something to spread on the cake, it was a canvas for creativity, with flowers, designs, and even piping techniques that reflected the era's playful aesthetic. The 1960s saw the rise of boxed cake mixes, making the process easier for busy families, though we can all agree that nothing beats the satisfaction of a homemade creation. Today, while pre-made cakes and frosting might be more common, many still love the nostalgic feel of a homemade layer cake. Rectangular school pizza became the iconic lunch that defined cafeteria culture throughout the decade. Unlike round pizzeria pies, these pizzas were baked on massive sheet pans and cut into perfect squares that fit neatly onto compartmentalized lunch trays. The crust was thick, doughy, and slightly chewy, with a golden bottom from being baked directly on greased aluminum. Cafeteria workers spread tomato sauce from industrial cans across the dough, then covered it with mozzarella and commodity cheese that turned bubbly and brown in commercial ovens. The cheese had a particular stretchiness that regular pizza couldn't match, pulling into long strings when students bit into their squares. Friday Pizza Day was sacred, and children who forgot their lunch money suffered genuine disappointment. The recipe was simple, but execution required timing and institutional knowledge passed between cafeteria veterans. Rectangular school pizza created its own category of comfort that generations still remember fondly. Number 16, liver and onions. Sliced beef liver dusted in flour and pan-fried with a pile of yellow onions until both were soft and caramelized. Woolworths served it with mashed potatoes or boiled potatoes in a roll. This was old people food even in the 1950s. Younger customers walked past it. Older customers ordered it every week. The liver was thin cut, cooked fast in a hot skillet with butter, and the onions were piled on top until you could barely see the meat underneath. It was one of those dishes that divided the counter. Half the stools loved it, half the stools could smell it and wished they were sitting somewhere else. When Woolworths closed, liver and onions did not migrate to any other restaurant chain. It went home and stayed there, and even there, it is fading. The women behind the counter. Almost every Woolworths lunch counter in the country was run by women. They cooked, they served, they cleaned, and they did it for wages that barely covered bus fare. Most of them wore white uniforms and paper caps. Most of them knew the regulars by name and by order. They were not chefs, and they would have laughed if you called them that. They were working women who stood on their feet for 8 hours a day over a flat-top grill in a store that smelled like popcorn and floor wax. They kept the food moving, the coffee hot, and the counter clean, and they did it without complaint because complaining did not pay any better than cooking. When those women retired or moved on, nobody replaced them. The skill set did not transfer to fast food, and fast food did not want it. There's something undeniably comforting about the warm aroma of cinnamon rolls filling a home, and in the 1960s, these sweet, spiced treats became a breakfast and dessert favorite across America. Though cinnamon rolls have roots in Swedish baking traditions, their popularity exploded in the U.S. in the mid-20th century, thanks in part to the rise of home baking and the growing accessibility of ingredients like cinnamon and sugar. Made from a soft, yeasted dough, cinnamon rolls are rolled up with a rich mixture of cinnamon, sugar, and butter, then sliced into individual portions and baked to golden perfection. The final touch is a glaze, often made from powdered sugar and milk, drizzled over the top for that iconic sweetness. These rolls were often served fresh out of the oven, making them an ideal treat for chilly mornings. In the 1960s, cinnamon rolls were commonly made from scratch, with friends gathering to line up at bakeries. Today, many opt for pre-made dough or even frozen versions, making them more convenient, but the nostalgia of the 1960s cinnamon roll still remains strong. Porcupine meatballs earned their name from the rice mixed into ground beef that poked through the surface like tiny quills after baking. Cafeteria ladies mixed ground beef with uncooked rice, minced onion, salt, and pepper, then formed them into balls and smothered them in tomato sauce before baking. The magic happened as the rice absorbed tomato juices and expanded, creating meatballs that were moist and tender while stretching the meat budget further than any administrator expected. Schools loved this recipe because rice was cheap and 1 pound of ground beef could feed twice as many students. Children lined up eagerly because the tomato sauce turned sweet and sticky during the long bake, coating each meatball in glossy red sauce that tasted like comfort. These weren't gourmet creations, but they were honest food made with care by women who understood that hungry children needed substance. Porcupine meatballs represented cafeteria ingenuity at its finest. Number 17, Salisbury steak plate. A ground beef patty shaped into an oval, pan-fried and covered in thick mushroom gravy, served with mashed potatoes and usually a side of canned green beans. Woolworth's Salisbury steak was not a hamburger. The patty had breadcrumbs and egg mixed into the meat, which made it softer and stretched it further. 1 pound of ground beef could produce 3 or 4 patties this way, and the gravy covered up the fact that the meat was more filler than steak. The name came from a doctor in the 1880s who promoted ground beef patties as a health food. By the time Woolworths put it on the menu, nobody remembered the doctor. They just knew it was cheap, hot, and filling. and it came with enough gravy to make everything on the plate taste the same. Creamed peas on toast represented the practical philosophy that defined Depression-era cooking carried forward into 70s cafeterias. Frozen peas were simmered in a white sauce made from butter, flour, and milk until the sauce thickened enough to coat a spoon. This creamy mixture was spooned generously over slices of white toast that had been lightly buttered and kept warm in steam tables. The toast absorbed the sauce gradually, creating layers of texture from crispy edges to soft, sauce-soaked centers. Some cafeterias added hard-boiled egg slices on top for additional protein and visual appeal. The dish looked simple, but delivered genuine comfort, especially on cold winter days when students needed warming from the inside. Teachers who remembered eating similar meals during their own childhoods often praised the cafeteria for keeping this tradition alive. Creamed peas on toast taught students that deliciousness didn't require complexity, and that vegetables could taste genuinely good when prepared with care. 25 treats that used to fill the glass cases of bakeries in every neighborhood in this country, and one by one they disappeared because the bakeries that made them did too. If you remember any of these from your childhood, leave a comment and tell me which one you miss the most. And if your grandmother made any of them at home, share this video with someone who would remember the taste. Hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.